Welcome back to Whispers from the Wizarding World. In this part, the story moves beyond Hogwarts into the hidden heart of the Ministry of Magic, a place built to protect the world from things it was never meant to understand. Some doors are locked not to keep people out, but to keep something in. Settle in and continue the story.
Story 6. The Department of Mysteries. The locked door. Helena Pritchard had been an unspeakable for 7 years. She worked in the Department of Mysteries, deep in the Ministry of Magic, researching phenomena that the wizarding world didn't fully understand. Time, death, thought, love, prophecy, these were her domains, studied in secret, discussed with no one outside her department. The Department of Mysteries had many rooms, each dedicated to a different enigma. The time room, where time turners were stored and temporal magic researched. The death chamber, with its mysterious veil that whispered with the voices of the dead. The brain room, where thoughts took physical form. The love chamber, studying the most mysterious force of all. But there was one room that Helena had never been permitted to enter, a room at the end of a corridor that most unspeakables pretended didn't exist. It was called, simply, the locked room. The door was black, made of a material that wasn't quite wood or metal or stone, but somehow all three. It had no handle, no lock, no keyhole, just a smooth surface inscribed with a single word in silver letters: wait. Helena had asked about the room during her first week. Her supervisor, a wizened old unspeakable named Cornelius Frost, had looked at her with an expression somewhere between fear and sorrow. Don't ask about that room, Helena. Don't think about it. Don't research it. Don't try to access it. Just accept that it exists and leave it alone. But what's in there? Something that must not be disturbed. That's all you need to know. Over the years, Helena had heard whispers. The locked room had been sealed 300 years ago by a coalition of the most powerful wizards in Britain. What was inside had been deemed too dangerous to destroy. Destruction might release it, but also too dangerous to access. So it had been locked away, placed under guard, and simply left. Supposedly, the room was checked once per generation by the sitting Minister of Magic and the head of the Department of Mysteries, just to ensure the seals remained intact. But no one was allowed to enter. No one was allowed to truly investigate what was sealed away. Helena had been content to leave it alone, to focus on her authorized research. But then came the incident in the time room. An experiment had gone wrong. Junior Unspeakable, attempting to study temporal paradoxes, had accidentally created a minor rift in time. It was contained quickly, no lasting damage done, but for several minutes, time had flowed strangely throughout the Department of Mysteries. Clocks ran backward, researchers experienced moments out of sequence, and in Helena's case, she had briefly experienced something else. She'd been walking past the locked room when the temporal distortion hit. And for just a moment, perhaps a second or two, she'd experienced time inside that room. Not seen, experienced. Her consciousness had slipped through the seals, bypassed the locks, and touched whatever existed beyond that black door. What she'd felt was indescribable. Terror beyond terror, a sense of wrongness so profound that her mind had tried to shut down rather than process it. And underneath that, a hunger. Something sealed in that room was aware, and it was hungry, and it wanted out. The experience had lasted only a second, but it haunted Helena. She began researching the room's history discreetly, using her access to ministry archives to piece together what she could find. The room had been sealed in 1702 by a group including the then Minister of Magic and 3 set of the most powerful wizards of the age. The records were vague about what they'd sealed away, using euphemisms like an unfortunate experiment and a regrettable discovery. But Helena found references in personal letters, in diary entries, in documents that hadn't been officially sanitized. A wizard named Mordred Blackthorn had been conducting research into dimensional magic, attempting to access planes of existence beyond our normal reality. He'd succeeded, briefly opening a portal to somewhere else. And something had come through, something that couldn't be killed or banished, only contained. Helena found a fragment of an account written by one of the wizards who had helped seal the room. It is not of our world. It thinks in ways that would drive us mad if we comprehended. It exists in dimensions we cannot perceive, and it hungers for our reality, wishes to consume it, to replace it with something of its own nature. We cannot kill it. We can only trap it and pray the seals hold. But the seals had held for 300 years. But Helena had felt them during that temporal distortion, and she'd sensed something troubling. They were weakening. Not dramatically, not imminently, but gradually, inexorably, like water wearing away stone. Given another century, maybe 2, they would fail. Helena went to Cornelia Frost with her concerns. He listened to her account of the temporal slip, read her research, and then sat in silence for a long time. "You're right," he finally said. "The seals are degrading. We've known for about 50 years, but there's nothing we can do about them." "Why not?" Helena demanded. "We're the Department of Mysteries. Surely we can research better containment methods, stronger seals." "We've tried," Frost interrupted. "Every approach we can think of. But here's the problem. To improve the seals, we'd need to understand what we're sealing. And to understand it, we'd need to study it. And studying it means opening that room, exposing ourselves to whatever's inside. The risk is too great, so we're just waiting for the seals to fail. We're hoping that future generations will be cleverer than us," Frost said quietly. "But they'll find a solution we've missed. But yes, essentially, we're waiting and hoping. It's not a good plan, but it's the only one we have." Helena couldn't accept that. She began her own research program, studying dimensional magic, containment theory, sealing spells. She worked obsessively, barely sleeping, driven by the memory of that brief contact with the thing in the locked room. Months passed. Her research yielded some interesting theoretical results, but nothing practical, nothing that could actually strengthen the seals without requiring direct contact with what was sealed. Then one night, working late in her office, Helena experienced it again. Not a temporal distortion, this time's something else. A pulse of energy from the locked room, brief but powerful, like a heartbeat. Helena grabbed her wand and ran to the corridor. Other unspeakables were emerging from their offices, all of them looking shaken. They'd all felt it. "The seals," someone whispered. "Something's wrong with the seals." They gathered outside the locked room, staring at the black door. The silver word "wait" seemed to pulse now, glowing and dimming in rhythm with some unseen force. And through the door, faint but audible, came a sound. It wasn't quite a voice. It was like if sound could be made of mathematics, of geometric shapes, of colors that didn't exist. It formed patterns that tried to create meaning in their minds, that pushed at the boundaries of human perception. "Everyone back," Frost commanded. "We need to evacuate this level and alert the minister." But before he could finish, the door cracked, not open, but developed a thin fracture running from top to bottom. And through that fracture, something began to seep. It looked like darkness, but darkness that moved wrong, that existed in too many dimensions, that hurt to look at directly. Helena acted on instinct. She raised her wand and cast every containment charm she'd learned in 7 years of study, layering them one atop another, weaving a net of magical force across that crack. Other unspeakables joined her, adding their power to the containment. The darkness pressed against their magic, testing it, probing for weaknesses. Helena felt its intelligence, its alien consciousness examining their defenses, and she felt something else: recognition. It knew her. It remembered her presence from that temporal distortion months ago. It had been waiting for her. Specifically, "It wants you," Frost said beside her, his face pale. It thinks you're a weakness it can exploit, Helena. You need to leave now." "If I leave, the containment fails," Helena replied through gritted teeth. Her magic was integral to the net they'd woven. Removing it would create a gap. "Then we all stay," Frost said grimly. They stood there for hours, maintaining the containment while emergency teams worked to repair the seal. The ministry's best curse breakers, ancient wizards pulled out of retirement. Specialists, D-dimensional magical of them, worked on that crack while the unspeakables held back the darkness. Finally, near dawn, the seal was repaired. The crack closed. The darkness retreated, and the door returned to its smooth, unbroken surface. But the silver word had changed. Where it had once said "wait," it now said "soon." The unspeakables were debriefed, sworn to additional secrecy, and given healing potions for the magical exhaustion they'd suffered. Helena was commended for her quick thinking and granted a week of leave to recover. But she couldn't rest. That word soon haunted her. The thing behind the door was getting stronger. The seals were failing faster than anyone had predicted, and someday, perhaps in her lifetime, they would fail completely. Helena returned to work with a new focus. If the seals couldn't hold forever, then they needed a backup plan. Not containment, but evacuation. They needed to identify where the thing would break free and ensure that area could be cleared quickly. They needed protocols for dealing with a dimensional breach. They needed, essentially, to prepare for the apocalypse. She wrote reports, gave presentations, argued with bureaucrats who didn't want to acknowledge the problem. Progress was slow, frustratingly slow, but she persisted. Years later, Helena became head of the Department of Mysteries. Her first act was to establish the locked room protocol, a detailed plan for what to do when the seals finally failed. Evacuation routes, containment teams, diplomatic channels to warn other magical governments. Even a doomsday protocol if all else failed. She also instituted regular monitoring of the seals with measurements and analysis to predict when failure might occur. Current estimates suggested they had perhaps a century before catastrophic breach, maybe less, maybe more. The dimensional mathematics were imprecise. Helena was old now, her hair gray, her hands beginning to shake with age. But she still came to work every day, still monitored that black door, still carried the memory of touching the consciousness behind it. Sometimes she would stand outside the locked room late at night when the department was mostly empty, and she would feel it reaching back. But the thing that existed beyond normal dimensions, that waited with patience beyond human understanding. It knew she was there, it remembered her, and it was counting down to the day when it could finally escape its prison. Not yet, Helena would whisper to the door. Not on my watch. But she knew that someday someone would stand where she stood now, and the door would open, and whatever came out would change the wizarding world forever. All she could do was delay that day as long as possible and ensure her successors were as prepared as they could be. The silver word on the door had changed again recently. Now it said just one thing: ready. Helena shivered every time she read it. Ready for what? To escape, to consume, to transform our reality into something we couldn't survive. She didn't know, but she would keep watching, keep preparing, keep hoping that when the moment finally came, they would be ready too.
This part of the story ends here. Some threats don't announce themselves with noise or chaos. They wait, they weaken seals, they prepare. Thank you for listening to Whispers from the Wizarding World. Subscribe and follow to continue with the next part of the story. Until then, some doors are better left closed.